Have you longed for a Marvel Avengers game set in a AAA space that wasn't a mobile cash grab or Lego game?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Finally, we have a proper Avengers game. Maybe. Even though it comes into the looter-shooter Destiny-like formula, it still seems to have some things going for it. Ever since it was initially revealed, I've wanted an Avengers game of the epic magnitude of that of Spider-Man or God of War, but the last game I played with the Avengers characters would be Marvel Heroes, which was an ARPG that was sadly canceled back in 2017. You could say this is basically that, but in third person and a higher budget. The Avengers beta has come back this weekend, finally with its open beta for all platforms, but I played it last week on PS4, and although I know some of this stuff will change upon release, here's some of my impressions. One of the first things you notice right off the bat with this game is the visuals. The game nails look very well for Avengers, and even after the backlash of your generic Avengers look, Crystal Dynamics went back and tuned them up to look a bit more like their MCU counterparts. There is a special attention to detail with every hero, especially with the way they fight and feel, right down to the tiniest detail. There's no shortage of effects and particles either, so there's no telling how many assets were created to give the game such a good look, but the high fidelity may mean that the game may suffer on base consoles for what they're trying to do with how much is going on screen at one time. Now, the combat in this game, it's mostly that of like a brawler action title with abilities thrown into the mix. But it's something we haven't seen before, but where this game differs is the overwhelming amount of skills you can unlock to tailor an Avenger to your playstyle. With more coming after launch, I can see the combat remaining interesting outside of your light and heavy attack spam. But it is probably what you expect it to be. So for instance, Iron Man has a different tree for each style that he can fight in. So he has a tree specifically for his lasers, one for his repulsors, and one for rockets, which each of these offer different type of combos. And for the Hulk, he's more melee focused, so you can expect more of that from his skill tree, which I have more to say about him a little bit later. Within the beta, throughout the Avengers Day campaign mission, you get a little bit of a taste of each Avenger and how they play. They're all pretty unique and offer their own combat style, with Iron Man being more utility focused and Hulk relying on brute strength and rage abilities. The mechanics are similar enough, but each has their own playstyle and none feel too the same. With more coming at launch, it only makes you wonder what Crystal Dynamics has in store for future heroes and how they plan to keep them from being a carbon copy of characters already in the game. The only character I would say was my least favorite was the Hulk. He's the biggest and punches the hardest in the group, but yet it still takes him about 4 hits to take out a standard unit. Yeah, it doesn't make much sense for someone of his scale. I feel like the Hulk should be stronger, not get taken out as easily as the other Avengers. If anything, he should, in a sense, be able to tank a lot and take more damage than he can, but it seems to be the same as most of the other people. Now, I don't know if he will have any skill trees that will boost his base damage or defensive capabilities, or whether that will be tied into his gear, but at his base level, he definitely needs some kind of buff. I don't know what that would be, but right now, I don't think he's viable for the type of character he is. You can disagree with me, that's fine. With these characters, the game has given us a few enemy types to keep us on our toes, with different types of attacks, some with status effects, and others that force us to use different techniques. But once the full game releases, there are said to be many more to keep from being too repetitive. Which overall, I thought the enemies were decent that we were fighting. Nothing too crazy. Some of them had adapted superpowers, others would use weapons, things of that nature. I thought they were okay. Just hopefully down the line there would be a lot more to deal with, and not just humanoid and robots. That'd be pretty cool. One major thing that stuck out to me though that was a big positive is that this game excels the most within the raid style fights of the villain sector and the boss fights. The Abomination fight with the Hulk was something that wasn't expected in the beta, and the more simple Taskmaster fight was just a taste of villains we'll see in the game. I can't wait to see who else will be thrown into the mix of MODOK's forces, but the Warbot at the end of the villain sector is what dug me into the game the most upon playing that mission. Give me more of that and I'll gladly continue playing. That was a lot of fun. So those were some of the good things about the game's beta. Now here are some of the things I didn't like so much. While playing the game, at least the multiplayer portion of it, the mechanics seemed to be a little bit too simple for my liking. Most of the missions boiled down to move to point A, kill X, move to point B, and kill Y. Or securing an area and or destroying a static object while also trying to defend it from enemies. But I hope in the full release there will be more creative mechanics involved with the missions outside of the campaign, but I guess time will tell. It seems like we got most of what we'd be doing within the war table, but I hope I'm wrong. Now, with my next point, before anyone jumps to the comments and tries to jump down my throat for what I'm about to say, yes, I do realize that this game was marketed from the start as a looter shooter, and grinding tends to come with the genre, but for this game, I feel with an over-reliance of grinding, it could more or less make the experience tiresome and boring. There's no telling how much the developers have went into designing the game with the purpose of replaying missions or stretching out content to only keep players playing longer than rather going all out for the sake of fun and uniqueness. But this is something that I feared may take precedence over everything else when you're playing this game, and I don't know if that's the kind of thing I'm looking for with Avengers. So hopefully they have a lot of content lined up to keep it from getting stale, boring, and repetitive. Another thing I didn't like was the traversal. Traversing in this game, it seems to be bounced across all characters, and while that makes sense for a gameplay perspective to not have one character have a movement advantage over another, it kind of takes you out of the experience when you're playing as Iron Man and you want to zip around a level doing drive-bys with your repulsors only to realize you have a limiter slapped onto your thrusters. Something that I was thinking of was maybe they can add like a boost ability or something that ties to your ability gauge that lets you just move faster for a shorter period of time. Just give us the ability to move just a little bit faster. And also, for a game of this style, blocking is just as important as the combat itself. The game works off of a timed parry block, which works very well when you can pull it off. However, if you were wanting to play a more defensive and tanky character like the Hulk, there's no option or ability to do a held block, and what I mean by that is a block you can literally hold over time to gain aggro or take damage over time. But I feel like this could be as simple as using the ability gauge and it just draining over time as you use it. I just feel like it's something that some people would like to see come to the game or tied to a certain character's playstyle, just to give us another option of defense. As I was talking about in my previous point about the game being too grindy, another aspect that I'm afraid of is the mission structure is way too repetitive. Throughout the beta, I played all the offerings of what was available for missions. The story was overall fun. I mean, it seems like there was different sequences and things that you can do to keep you going, but also not getting too bland and uninteresting. But for mostly everything else, it was kind of a bit of a toss-up. Some of the missions boil down to taking out enemies, while others want you to secure areas for a period of time. It just didn't feel like something that I would like to be doing long term when I'm playing the game. Now, where the game does shine with a particular mission type is the villain sector, which takes you through an aim base fighting off hordes of enemies, and at the end you fight a boss, which is the Warbot, which is hands down the funnest I've had in the game and this beta. I can only hope in the full release that there are many more villain sectors that are like that are just as much fun, if not more. But I can see that those and raid style missions are definitely my preferred way to play over anything else that I've seen so far other than the story missions. My last point for this video, and something that concerns me the most with this title, is the potential for it being just a cash grab. And I do hope that I'm wrong on that point, but it is a valid fear to have with the state of games that are coming out nowadays and what developers are trying to do. So I have every reason for being fearful of it being a cash grab, because it's a huge license, it's a cash cow, it can generate revenue. So I mean, honestly, if you were a business person, why wouldn't you go the route that is the easiest, that makes you the most money? But when I first heard of the game being a looter shooter, I was instantly worried the game would take the route of trying to, cash in on the Avengers license, because we've seen so many games and developers trying to chase trends of other popular titles and genres just for the sake of bringing in that sweet revenue. But typically games of this type are made for that reason. It's most guaranteed to bring in money with not as much risk, as opposed to trying to do something a little bit different and new. I mean, we already have Spider-Man going console exclusive with the PS4 and PS5, and Crystal claiming all future content will be free. There's no guarantee that some of this stuff won't change after launch. They could easily add in microtransactions if they really wanted to, or do something just as scummy as the Eververse store in Destiny 2 and charge people real money for the premium currency. And this is something that I fear with a game like this, and nobody's standing up to it or saying anything about it, and thus ruining a decent experience for the sole purpose of greed. Now, those are some of the good things and some of the bad things that I've seen with my first impressions for the Avengers beta, and I'm hoping that the game will come out to a relatively decent score after release. I'm thinking it'll be swimming in 6s and 7s, but I think I might wait until after release to see whether I get it or not, but I'm not sure. However, let me know what you guys think if you've played the beta or if you've been interested in the game. Let me know how you feel about it. Tell me some of the things you like. Tell me some of the things you don't. Tell me some of the things you agree or disagree with. Let's have a conversation about it. I truly want to know what people think, and if you enjoyed the video or want to support me in any way, dropping a like and or subscribing helps, and peace for now.